Thanks so much, Kim, for sharing that with us. I want to just let everyone know, you might have seen in the chat that we're now opening the floor to questions and answers. There is a Q&A box at the bottom of the screen where you can, I'm already starting to collect some questions. So yes, feel free to pose any questions and we'll get to them. I wanted to first ask a question posed in the chat about, and you could, if you could each answer this, what your perspectives are on bringing co-workers and the labor movement into the fight for abortion rights, how to do that, where to start doing that. Kim talked a little bit about how she's doing it in a more public place. But I think that, yeah, the question also is how do we insert this into our places of work as well? So.
I'm sorry, are you asking me in particular or are you asking?
Maria, both of you. Yeah. Maria Paula, do you want to go first to give Kim a break after her chat?
Hola, bueno.
Hello. Sure. Well, so in particular, in my case, I'm a doctor. I work with medical workers. It's very difficult to raise this topic with medical workers because we've been inundated with ideology about the protection of life and all these sorts of things. But one thing that's helped me personally has been, and which has helped in general too, and in our social engagement, not just at work, has been to talk about it in the way that Kim was proposing, really, to talk about concrete examples from our lives about how abortion happens or like what people's life situations are that bring them to this position, and to force people's humanity into the discussion, and to bring to the forefront the importance of the person who is pregnant. And I think it's important to learn about the people who themselves are going through this process. It's a reality of life. It's not just an abstract biological fact. It's something real that's lived. And it's very useful to talk about these concrete examples, to talk about examples like for the girls who are the victims of sexual violence, to talk about real women who face or who get abortions. And in this way, and then as well as part of the political work, for instance, in the union context, we have a program for working women. And there in our list of political demands as part of the program is the right to abortion. So this is something that we are winning the union movement to. And we are actively bringing this political struggle into union spaces. Yeah, and that's what I would like to share about the struggle.
Would you like me to share?
Yeah, go ahead, Kim.
So I wish I had a whole lot of wonderful information to share about this. I will say that because I'm a stay-at-home mom of a special needs child, so I am unfortunately not in a workplace where I have opportunities to speak with my coworkers. I will say that we have met some people who are amazing through these speak outs, who are unionized, or their spouses are unionized, and they're quite interested and quite excited and serious members of our organization. And we've had the opportunity, we've been invited to go to the Labor Fest, which will be September 5th, and it'll probably happening all over the United States. We had to come up with like $50 for the table or something. And we're making leaflets, you know, as fast as we can with informational leaflets that we can pass out, and having the opportunity to speak to all kinds of trade union activists at events like that around the country. So we're working on getting our banner ready to take to the event, but signing people up to go and staff the table and get to talk to union workers. I think that would be like a good first step that everybody could probably look into, is what's happening on the 5th Labor Day next month, and joining and participating there and getting to know people. So that, I guess that's my first basic step.
Okay, thanks so much, Kim. I wanted to ask Maria Paula if she could explain a little bit more how she joined Just Cause as well as the other organizations. Like, how did you begin to build these coalitions? Who did you talk to? How did you begin to kind of develop this this group that would then be able to insert itself into these like mass mobilizations and strikes that appeared in 2019 and 2021 in Colombia?
Bueno, yo me
Well,
uní a Causa
so
porque
I'll speak for Causa Justa first. So there we had were the Colombian section of Global Doctors for Choice. And I, as one of the founders of Causa Justa, Just Cause, was involved from the start. In 2017 to 2020, more or less, we were working on building up, we were going through a process of talking to various different movers and shakers. So this was social movements, like unions, but also politicians, and so on. And we were essentially looking for allies at this time. And Causa Justa, Just Cause, is very close to the feminist movement. And through that, young women have been leading the struggles in Colombia in general, and especially in 2021. And this is something that's important. Causa Justa, Just Cause is not a mass movement, but it has there's a large amount of young women that have taken up the discourse promoted by Causa Justa, Just Cause, that, despite not being official members of the organization, are nevertheless defending its demands in politics. And for example, one of the things that we won, even before May, was that the candidate, Francia Marquez, who's now vice president of the country, publicly declared herself in favor of Causa Justa, Just Cause, in favor of its politics, waving around the green bandana that's the symbol of the abortion movement in Latin America. And this was a Black woman leader of the social movements, a politician taking up this demand and making it her own. So this was critical, as has been our allies with environmentalist groups, other social movements. And the other thing that I'd like to talk about is related to what was talked about most recently, which is that before bringing up our demand, there was the question of how we were publicizing ourselves and how we were promoting this. So on social media, in newspapers, how we were intervening in the discourse around abortion. And the bourgeois discourse was just all about gore and like the blood and the horror of abortions. And we were essentially intervened to change where the discourse is focused. Instead of being focused on the literal abortion procedure, we focused it on the humanity of the people who need these procedures in order to be able to advance our project.
Thanks, Maria Paula. Yeah, I think we have a very similar problem with the discourse around abortion, particularly publicly in the US, that a lot of groups are pushing back against right now. I wanted to ask Kim, what you think is the, what do you see as the biggest obstacle in building a mass movement in the US right now around abortion rights?
Well, I think let's see if I can put it this way. I think we should be kind of thinking about a timeline here, right? We have school is coming back 1st of September. Labor Day, 5th of September, right? We all want to go to our labor events so we can meet people and talk about reproductive rights. The 18th of October, the Women's March in Washington, D.C. and protests across the country. November 8th will be these elections, right? The midterms. And so we need to get from here to post-midterm with every human being who thinks we need to fight to defend a person's right to control their own bodies together, right? Not getting demoralized and not feeling like we can't win and that there's no hope in, no win that's ever possible. And I think we really need to do that by really very seriously getting these speak outs and meetings together as soon as possible and on campuses around the country. And I think through doing that, we're going to meet people whose ideas are going to be all over the place, right? Like I just explained, we have all these Democrats in power in Wisconsin and in the country, and our lives are getting shittier. And yet the hope is that the Democrats will help us in some way. Although I think more and more people are less and less convinced by that and are starting to see their own actions as mattering. But I think that the thing that's standing probably in the way for a lot of people is this hope that someone's going to come and rescue us and help us. But I think, we know that the Supreme Court is there for life, right? And we know that Biden has decided not to overturn the filibuster, right? And we know that in Wisconsin, for instance, you can't put this on our ballots and vote for it up or down. We don't have propositions like they do in California and New York, for instance. So making it state law is incredibly difficult. So people, I think, are going to start to wrap their minds around and need to start to wrap their minds around the idea that it's going to take direct action. And what do we do to move from small numbers to bigger numbers, to direct action, to civil disobedience? What does that all look like? What kind of conversations do we need to be having to move in that direction? So I think probably, building up numbers and confidence and having the opportunity to converse with people, to really, really converse with even small numbers of people at the same time, is really kind of where we have to start. I think we have to start where we are right now.
Yeah, I think that's really awesome response. That's spot on. Thanks so much. I wanted to, so Maria Paula, a question for you. How did you work with or against the evangelical religious forces in Colombia? How did evangelicalism influence working class people in the country in regards to the abortion movement?
Bueno, efectivamente.
Well, effectively, it's the evangelical groups have been a fundamental part of the anti-abortion movement in Colombia. They organize mobilizations, they protest in front of clinics, they harass women, they harass doctors, and these churches are consistently intervening against abortion. And over the years, the evangelical churches have won ground among the working class of Colombia, but at the same time, and they've been trying to intervene in politics, of course. Nevertheless, although many Colombians, whether Catholics or evangelicals, are not necessarily part they're not necessarily evangelicals themselves. The intervention is influencing them nonetheless, and it's influencing their pastors as well. For example, in September 2021, when 6,000 people were organizing in Bogota, the anti-abortion religious forces mobilized 15,000 people in the same month. So it's very difficult to break through like the loyalty of that people have towards these churches. So it's one thing that's been important for us has been to make visible that the majority of women who are getting abortions are Christians, are Catholic, the majority of them. So this is not, so we need to cut against these arguments that the church decides these things or that no Christians are doing these things. It's like, that is not the reality, it's on the ground. And we need to explain from a perspective, even from a Christian perspective, we need to be explaining why abortion should be legal, why these things are necessary to be able to win over the population. So Colombia is a secular state constitutionally, and that allows us to, that gives us more ground legally to put the brakes on these anti-abortion movements, but they're still organizing. So they've been collecting signatures for essentially petitions against abortion. So all of this is to say our victory is not complete. We still have fighting left to do. But every step of the way we need to be hammering home that it's not the flocks of these churches that are against abortion. It is purely their leadership that is handing down these perspectives.
I wanted to follow up on that response with a question about you know, the decriminalization of up to 24 weeks. What the struggle is now? You know, is it a question of ensuring access is available? Are you seeing continued mobilizations on this issue throughout the year? Yeah, if you could just talk a little bit more about how you're continuing to stay mobilized after this initial success.
Me parece muy importante tu pregunta porque
I think this question is very important because really what's happening in the US is a lesson to us as well, that even our victories can be rolled back if they're not reinforced by constant mobilizations, by the continuation of these movements to ensure that these protections are protected. And we need to be able to win against these referendums that are being organized right now. Like, one of these referendums could win, and then we'd have a step back, and we'd no longer have the right to abortion that we're enjoying right now. So we need to fight for the complete victory because, first of all, we haven't won even really full legal abortion. We've won decriminalization of abortion up to 24 weeks. And even though in reality, very few women are getting abortions after that point, it's nevertheless an obstacle and a threat to the continuation of our rights. And connected to all this is the question of whether abortion access is free or affordable, where we're in a situation where a lot of times it isn't, where it's legally allowed, but there isn't access. And this is particularly true in the rural areas, in small towns that don't have local services, and where women don't have the ability to travel to somewhere where it is available. So it's very important in this moment for us to be taking up the fight for the nationalization of the healthcare system in lockstep with all this, so that we ensure that not only are these things legal, that they're available. So to win that, we think that it's very important to continue mobilizing, that the feminist movement, Causa, Justa, Just Cause, and other organizations were building up our strength to try to build towards mobilizations on September 28th in the streets to do a big wave of demonstrations to defend our rights. And at the same time, we're also organizing all these actions to support certain cases that are being considered in the courts as they go on. So it's this legal aspect is very important, but it's nothing without the mobilization in the streets. And really, that's where we need to keep fighting to bring down these anti-abortion campaigns and to fight for a nationalized healthcare system that provides quality healthcare to everyone. And we need to keep fighting until there's complete legalization, not just decriminalization.
Kim, if you want to comment or jump into anything Maria Paula is saying, feel free. I saw you put something in the chat. I just wanted to invite you to talk as much as you want. So this is kind of, I guess, in relation to what Maria Paula was just talking about. It's a question from the audience. And I'm wondering if both of you can comment on this. It seems very important to connect the fight for the right to an abortion to the right to healthcare. And that has been something that historically has mobilized people in the US. So I'm wondering, or the question, I guess, is, do you have any thoughts on how we can connect these two movements? Yeah.
Well,
Bueno.
Just you want to go ahead?
¿Quería hablar María Paula o
No.
tú puedes ir primero, Kim, y luego?
I don't mind. Would you like
Pues a mí no me importa. María, ¿qué quieres?
Okay, I'm lost. Is Maria going ahead?
Bueno, entonces, ¿quién va a hablar ahorita?
I think you can go.
Creo que tú debes hablar, Kim.
How can we connect it to healthcare? Is that what you're asking? Okay. Well, I think that one of the most exciting things that, we can think about when we're talking to high school students and now even junior high school students is that the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer students who've been organizing for their rights over the last several years, and families who have been organizing as well to defend the rights of their children, means that gender affirming medical health, for instance, is something that's going to be coming up a lot at these speakouts, and it's going to be a way that really, I think, a reason that a lot of trans people are not just in solidarity, but in very serious solidarity with the demand to have access to abortion. I've already seen it in all the speakouts. I've already seen it. In terms of other kinds of healthcare, I think this is a really good way that the unions are going to be able to connect, is that the union movement, people within the union movement are going to need to study the health insurance that their unions are fighting for, and that we're going to need to know the details of what is and is not covered under union, under contracts that unions negotiate. I think that would be a really great place to start. I guess I will start with that. I mean, obviously healthcare is, I think we should know, and maybe everybody does know, maybe lots of people don't know, abortion, even where it is legal, is insanely expensive in this country. The pill, I don't know if people know this, but the medical abortion pill is $600. I mean, I know I'm 60, so I haven't, I haven't needed that kind of care for some time, but the medical pill itself is $600 and it is no longer available in Wisconsin. I called Walgreens and CVS this morning. It is not available. You cannot get a medical abortion through a pharmacy in Wisconsin right now. And then if we go on and talk about, about surgical abortions, I really think it's worth realizing how expensive it gets the longer you go into the pregnancy. So you can easily, second trimester, be into the $2,000, $3,000 range for an abortion. And people's abortions are going to get later and later because, it's more difficult to get, and you're going to have to transport yourself. So I was imagining a woman in central Wisconsin, for instance, today, or a person who could become pregnant in central Wisconsin needing to take time off work, hire childcare for their current family, have access to a vehicle, have access to gasoline money, have access to a hotel room, have access to food, for food while you're on your trip. All of these things added to $1,000 or $2,000 procedure makes this, this whole situation untenable, and just shows how very seriously and clearly we need national health care here in this country. Yes.
Thanks. Yeah. And I think that goes back to your, one of the first questions about how you can bring this perspective to your coworkers and to the labor movement. I think it's precisely as you said, in thinking about what kind of healthcare unions are going to be providing and what they're going to fight for. Maria Paula, did you want to comment on this?
Bueno, aunque ya he hablado.
Yes, well, I've spoken about it already a bit in the last response, but I'd like to add on to it. So obviously, right now we don't have a way to guarantee access in Colombia. It's supposed to be free, but in practice, what isn't free is traveling to where the procedure will take place, or equally, as Kim was saying, as one's pregnancy matures, the procedure becomes more expensive, and commonly, more and more women are requesting these services only rather late in their pregnancies. And despite the fact that it's within their rights, it becomes inaccessible because of the cost. So our fight for healthcare rights, as we've said, it's connected to, or one of the big obstacles in this process is healthcare workers, because right now the majority of doctors don't know how to perform abortions. They just know a related procedure called orselecto, and they don't know modern procedures for abortions. They haven't been trained. And even when they're in a position where they want to provide an abortion, where they can provide an abortion, they don't know how because it's not being taught to them in schools. So in this situation, we want to protect people's rights in a holistic manner. We want to protect people's health in a productive way. We want people to be able to take on maternity at or when they want to. So the criminalization of abortion is hypocritical because it's supposedly to protect life, but at the same time, it endangers life very literally because women are dying as a result of these policies. Whether it's due to a faulty procedure or malnutrition during pregnancy or any of these other health risks that accompany all of this process.
Yeah.
So we want to have a situation where we can protect people when they want to have children for real.
Thanks, Maria Paula. I wanted to follow that up with a question for you, Maria Paula, about, I know there were recent elections in Colombia, and Gustavo Petro and Francia Marquez from the left won, which you know is something that I think that the masses and the working class was struggling for and in the streets for, and I want to ask what your expectations are under this new government.
Bueno, esta es una
Well,
pregunta muy importante.
So this is a very important question. We've definitely won a new government that calls itself a government of the left, and that's important to begin with. But at the same time, it's a government that is a class coalition, where at the same time, there's people like Francia, the vice president, who really comes from the popular sectors, from the working class, from the movements. But at the same time, there's other sections of this government that are from the bourgeoisie. So there's going to be a permanent tension within this government regarding what rights will be accorded to the people. And looking at what groups the government has made alliances with in Congress, etc., the government made a pact with the Conservative Party, which is obviously an anti-abortion party, and we want to make sure that this doesn't mean that the government's going to go back on its promises, but we know that we can't trust this government fully if it's making these alliances with these conservative parties. Nevertheless, leading up to the elections, Francia, the vice president, put herself forward as being pro-abortion, pro-Causa, Justa, just cause, and Petro himself he sort of equivocated a bit, but his rhetoric was more like, well, if there's no hunger, if there's no poverty, there will be no abortion, sort of like attacking the economic roots of the question and sort of dodging the actual question on abortion. And at the same time, there's also the courts, which are separate from the government. And it's said that so far, its final word has been that it's going to respect our rights, but we don't really trust it. And we're going to need to keep putting pressure in the streets. We're going to need to keep, so that these politicians don't forget the promises they've made, as has happened in many countries. For example, in Brazil with Dilma Rousseff, in Honduras with, or I forget the name, but in these various other countries where supposedly left-wing politicians were elected, made a bunch of promises, and then the moment they get into government, suddenly they forget about abortion. It's no longer on the agenda. But it's something that's very important to us here, obviously. And massively, Colombians voted for candidates that put themselves for abortion. The antis did everything they could to demobilize this vote. They went around saying, like, don't vote for these candidates because of their abortion stances, and people voted for those candidates anyway. So that shows where the Colombian people stand on this question. And what we're moving for now is for what we call the social decriminalization of abortion as well.
I'm going to translate a comment that I think is useful for maybe both of the Kim and Maria Paula to comment on if you have any thoughts on. You can read it, Maria Paula, and I'll just translate it. It's from Hector. He says that the struggle for the right to abortion is a struggle of women, particularly of working women, but to win it, It's necessary that this struggle is accompanied by other democratic struggles that involves important sectors of the working class, such as the fight for universal health, the right to organize openly and freely in unions, and the right to strike. But I think that to put the demand for the right to an abortion within this wave of struggles for democratic rights, women should think or should have a program of transitional demands that serve as a bridge to place the demand of abortion amongst the democratic demands of the working class. So maybe this is related to what Maria Paula was saying about how the struggles that were already in the class, that were already in the streets, sorry, that her organizations were able to latch on to and to struggle with. So yeah, any thoughts on kind of like this question, or the traditional transitional demands that we should be pushing for at this moment?
Are you asking me?
Sorry, Kim. I'm just like, woo. I'm looking at you on my screen, but obviously, obviously you don't know that. Yeah, Kim, go ahead.
You know, it's I'm not exactly sure how to respond to that question. I think we find ourselves in such a dangerous situation right now. With millions of people who can become pregnant in this country no longer having access to abortion. I guess I'm not totally clear on what the question is, but I think we actually need to be quite straightforward and demanding abortion quite clearly and quite straightforward. And actually asking for people to use the word abortion. That's something that people have been pushed back and back and back and back over the last 5 decades, right? To talk about choice and not actually talk about abortion. So perhaps I'm misunderstanding. I'm not sure if he's feeling like there should be somewhere we can go in between where we are now and asking for, for instance, free abortion on demand. I'm maybe not understanding the question very clearly, but I think that right now the situation we're in is we really need to be very confident in our demands for full bodily autonomy. So I'm sorry if that doesn't help to answer. Perhaps he could add more if I'm not understanding.
Yeah, I think that was great. Maria Paula, do you want to add to this question, or we are slowly running, or quickly, I would say, running out of time. I wanted to keep this meeting to an hour and a half because everyone's eyes start glazing over at some point. Yeah, Maria Paula, I wanted to invite you to respond to that. And then there are a couple more questions in the chat that I can couple together, and it can kind of be a free for all. You guys can answer what you want to answer.
Okay, bueno,
Well, so regarding Hector's question, well, first, hello, Hector. And second, I don't think it's a question so much as a comment or an affirmation, and I'm totally in agreement with it, which is that the right for abortion, the right to abortion, is something that's critical for women and something that we as socialists, we can't leave it on the side. We need to put it in the middle of our demands and struggle in relation with the rest of our democratic demands and with the rest of our transitional demands. What that means in practice is bringing this demand for abortion as a part of a progression of demands that put us into conflict with the bourgeois structure and to take us forward to a revolutionary perspective. So and here I want to bring up a very important thing, which is that if abortion can, in theory, be a question of women of all classes, because they can all become pregnant, it's nevertheless, in reality, a working woman's problem, because these are the women who will have trouble getting access to the abortion, and who truly lose the right to abortion when laws are passed against it, because the rich can always get around the laws. They will always be able to obtain safe abortions, even if they're not legal. And the people who will always be at risk will be the working people. And for that reason, it is a worker struggle. But at the same time, I think that when it's taken up by the bourgeoisie, it loses its character. It stops being a working class demand. And as a result, we can't trust when parties like the Democrats take it up.
I'm going to leave the last question to Maria Paula, and then we'll start wrapping up with comments. So Maria, how did organizers address education and miseducation around reproductive justice in Colombia? In the US, there is a lot of support for abortion legalization, but people don't always think about this as a class issue, and they don't think about the right to have children with dignity, etc. So yeah, that's the question.
Bueno, a
Well,
pesar de nuestros esfuerzos en el
so despite our efforts in Colombia of educating people within the union movement elsewhere, our influence is rather small. And in reality, the majority of the union movement is not yet involved in this struggle. So it's really the vanguard that's been taking this up. It's been the feminist movements that's been taking this up. And here, well, we call them collectives, not groups, that have been taking up this question of education on these issues, taken up by women that come from the working class. And these are working women, precarious women. And despite coming from these backgrounds, they don't self-identify necessarily as working class people. They identify primarily as abortion activists. So our work in the union movement right now is it's critical. It's something that we need to keep working on, but we have only just begun it, and we are working to build our strengths there. So it's a task that remains to be done.
Thanks so much. Kim, Maria Paula, do you have any last comments or anything, any closing remarks for the attendees here?
Well, maybe I'll just wrap up. I think the thing that I'd like to share with the people that are on this call is that my experience organizing with the people that I've met over the last, 47 days or whatever it is, has been so incredibly inspiring. And actually listening and taking the time to very carefully listen to each of the participants at these speakouts has led me to understand how much people actually do know and how much they understand based on their own lived experiences. And that really taking the time to listen to them and take into consideration everything that they're saying has meant that the formation of our new coalition, for instance, it has just has been so inspiring. And I think, excuse me, I think that it will make it an incredibly welcoming and inviting organization for more people to join into. And I think that's really the critical thing right now, is that you know, especially as a socialist, I want to be speaking to people in ways that relate to them and not using terminology and jargon, and certainly not thinking that I have all the answers, and realizing that they have many answers, and I can learn as much from these new activists as they can learn from me. And I think that's been a really important learning experience for me. And I'm so inspired and impressed by all the people that I've now got the opportunity to work with. And I think if you hold your own speak out, hand out your 500 leaflets on your local campus and get a bullhorn or whatever, that you might find that you will find the same. And I really am looking forward to continuing to work with all of you. And thank you so much for the invite to be a part of this tonight. I learned so much. Thank you.
Thanks. Maria Paula, any closing comments?
I believe we are having some minor technical difficulties with the speaker. Sorry, I couldn't find the mute button, but we're good now. So, so some parting thoughts for all of you in the US is I want to share some words of hope. Some words of hope in the struggle. And just as Roe v. Wade wasn't eternal, didn't last forever, neither is the action against it. It is still possible to change it with struggle, with organization. It is possible to reverse the defeats. It is possible to re-win the right to abortion, and to win it even better than we had it before. So super briefly, that's my parting comment. And you gotta fight. This tiny moment of defeat isn't eternal. It's something that we can and must reverse. And with the forces of the working class, with the forces of millions of women who in the US and Colombia, who in this moment are organizing themselves, who are protesting, they have the power to emerge from this victorious.
Thanks so much. We need all of the fuerza we can get, Maria Paula. I just want to say thank you so much to Maria Paula and to Kim for speaking and for sharing their experiences. Thank you to everyone for attending. Again, my name is Dolores. I am a member of Workers' Voice. We hold these monthly forums. Our next forum is going to be on housing. So there's more information on our website about that. I just wanted to say though, I think that at Workers' Voice, we believe that it's necessary to build a revolutionary party in order to launch forward this fight. But it is also critical that we continue studying together, that we continue and begin to practice the tactics that we are learning continually from our mistakes, from our past, from other countries and places. And there are many socialist feminist organizations in the US right now that are moving on this, and we need to start joining those coalitions if we haven't already, and being a revolutionary socialist voice in those organizations so that, things aren't co-opted again by the Democrats as they are hoping to do with their march that is just, coincidentally a month before the midterms. So as Kim said, we have a lot to do in the next couple of months, but there's a lot of reason to have a lot of fight and to have a lot of energy. And I hope that we're in conversation soon. I think that we can build this a coalition together in the US, and we can win free open rights to abortions. So thank you so much for being here, everyone, and good night. Have a wonderful evening.